Hello everyone, and welcome back to Multiverse Monologues. I am Ben Rayside, and Shazam! Fury of the Gods is out in theaters now, and I can think of no better time to rank all of the DC films. Now, this list is going to look a little bit different than usual, as we are going to be ranking every single movie in the DC Extended Universe, which gives us, I think, 13, as well as The Batman, Joker, and Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Trilogy. So all in total, 18 projects. I want this to be a more focused look at the modern era of DC, and with that, let's get into it. Coming in at dead last, we have Justice League.
Like brunch. What is brunch? You wait in line for an hour for essentially lunch.
Just a formality, I will be including both versions of the Justice League on this list, and the one directed by Joss Whedon comes in dead last. When I saw this movie in theaters, I thought it was average at best, and when I looked into the behind the scenes, this movie absolutely disgusted me on all levels. I would consider myself a fan of Snyder's work, and the way his version of Justice League was butchered is something that Warner Bros. And DC should be ashamed of. Besides the BTS elements, the story lacks any sort of audience investment, the CGI is atrocious, and the character work is actually unbelievable. None of the tone stays consistent with the previous films, and you end up with a movie that is a complete dumpster fire from start to finish. At number 17, we have The Joker. And this is going to make a lot of people angry, but remember, this is my list, and the way I feel about this movie is probably just as strong as you do. I do not like this movie at all. And after I left the theater, I never wanted to watch this movie again. I had a very uneasy feeling, and while you may say that's the way it's supposed to make you feel, that's not the way I want to feel after I watch a film. I get the message it was going for, but I wanted a story focused on the Joker. To me, they slapped his name on the title, but the film was more about a depressed man dealing with the problems of his life. It was directed well, but the violence and visceral nature was just, I guess, a little too much for me. Call me a fan of cookie-cutter television, but this one was a little too dark for my tastes, and along with some issues I had with the character portrayal, that's why it's all the way down here on this list. At number 16, we have David Ayer's Suicide Squad.
So that's it? What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
I remember being very excited for this film when it came out, but never ended up actually seeing it. Years later, I decided to watch it for James Gunn's Suicide Squad, and aside from entertaining performances from Will Smith and Margot Robbie, the film fell very flat for me. I think there's a good film in here, but the final product is very choppy, with many scenes connecting each other through like a pop song. The villain is very weak, the story is not engaging at all, and that hurts the overall product. While there are elements that I do like, the Suicide Squad's first outing is a dud in my book. At number 15, we have Wonder Woman 1984.
It's all art. That's just a trash can.
It's just a trash can. Yeah.
What really upsets me about this one is the fact that the first one is so great. I'm a huge fan of the first Wonder Woman movie and was very excited about this one. Wonder Woman's second outing is a far cry from the first, as it has some of the strangest plot choices I've ever seen in a movie before. The whole Wish plot point is riddled with holes in the story. Wonder Woman bringing back Steve in someone else's body is absolute insanity, and the fact that this movie is 2.5 hours baffles me. Specifically, the whole Steve thing is actually an atrocity though. They didn't need to do that. The stone grants wishes, so they could have easily just brought him back from the dead. But for some reason they decide to have Steve's conscious in someone else's body, and then have Wonder Woman sleep with him. The whole movie is full of stuff like this, and it ended up making me angry that the sequel didn't live up to the first. Wonder Woman and Gal Gadot deserve much better. At number 14, we have Margot Robbie's Birds of Prey.
You know what a harlequin is? A harlequin's role is to serve. It's nothing without a master.
While this movie is a significant step up from the Suicide Squad, this movie just didn't grab me all that much. The acting is pretty good, the story is decent, and Margot is always good in her role of Harley Quinn. I'm just not sure this movie needed to get made. I'm surprised that something like this got greenlit before movies like Green Lantern or The Flash. I don't really have much else to say. I saw it and forgot about it after like a day or two. At number 13, we have Shazam.
I'd like to purchase some of your finest beer, please.
I actually really like this first Shazam quite a bit, but the ultimate quality of the film never reaches anything else on this list. It's a fun superhero movie, but at this point in the superhero genre, I look for a little bit more. The villain is really flat, and the CGI is very rough at times. I'm also not the biggest fan of all the kids getting Shazam powers. Just as a concept, that kind of turns me off. I know that's how it is in the comics, it's just not for me. Where this movie shines, though, is in Zachary Levi and Jack Dylan Grazer's performances as Shazam and Freddie Freeman. They are great and play very well off of each other. That's why this movie works. But when that's really the only thing that does, it ends up being a very mid-tier comic book film. Coming in at number 12, we have Shazam's counterpart, Black Adam. I had another fun time with this one as well, and The Rock is great as Black Adam. The film has a ton of action and many scenes that are pretty brutal when compared to most superhero media these days, and that kind of attracted me. The Justice Society was also great, specifically Dr. Fate. His sacrifice at the end of the film was a high point for sure. While Black Adam gets points for its action and the Justice Society element, the story is pretty generic, and some of the human plot elements in Kahndaq were very boring every time we focused on it. Overall, you have another middle-of-the-road DC film. Coming in at number 11, we have the recently released Shazam! Fury of the Gods.
Look, I might not have as much experience as you, because I'm not super old like you, but I've seen all of the Fast and the Furious movies, lady. It's all about family!
Maybe it was because my expectations were in the ground for this movie, but I actually had a great time with it. Don't get me wrong, it's not the greatest movie ever, but I enjoyed myself throughout the runtime of this movie. It feels a bit long, there are some choices near the end that give me some cause for confusion, and the villains weren't very compelling, but overall it's a really good superhero flick. The best parts of this movie are, yet again, Shazam and Freddy. Their dynamic with each other and without are what make this movie work. Rachel Zegler's new character is also done very well, and the whole Shazam family was very enjoyable to see on screen. Again, it's not really trying to be the next Dark Knight, and I give it props for that. I was also surprised with how much I laughed at this movie. As someone who is tired of Marvel's jokey formula in every one of their movies, it was refreshing to actually laugh at the funny jokes in this one. Overall, very solid superhero flick. Getting into our top 10, we have James Gunn's Suicide Squad.
What?
We're here to save you.
You were gonna save me?
It was a really good plan, too.
Well, I can go back inside and you can still do it.
That's patronizing.
I'm so sorry. Harley Quinn.
Bloodsport.
By now, we have reached a point where these movies are all pretty good. This movie is without a doubt the best movie Margot Robbie takes the lead in, and it possesses an element that superhero movies are kind of lacking nowadays, and that is the heart. This movie is full of it, whether we're talking about Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher, or even Bloodsport. The plot is also very strong, but the best thing about this movie is the performances, as they are all very entertaining. John Cena's Peacemaker, David Dastmalchian's Polka Dot Man, and Idris Elba's Bloodsport are all very entertaining as newcomers. Margot Robbie and surprisingly Joel Kinnaman give excellent returning performances as well. Overall, it's a very solid outing again by James Gunn & Co. with a movie that is very underrated. Speaking of underrated, at number 9 we have James Wan's Aquaman.
My father was a lighthouse keeper. My mother was a queen. But life has a way of bringing people together.
I was cold on this movie from the start. I've rewatched it many times since its release, and it's grown on me quite a bit. Jason Momoa is excellent as Aquaman, but the standout performance goes to Patrick Wilson as King Orm. He was excellent as the lead villain. The best part of this film, however, is the visuals, which pop off the screen. The underwater world of Atlantis is epic, and each location we visit develops the plot in an interesting way, especially the sections with the deep. The final battle is awesome to witness, and it ends up being one of DC's most epic films. Coming in at number 8, we have Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman.
Goodbye, brother.
as I said before, I'm a huge fan of the film and what it did for the character of Wonder Woman. A character that was long overdue for a superhero outing. What really makes me so invested in this movie are two things. One, the relationship between Diana and Steve, which is literal perfection. The fish out of water story works so well as Steve sits there and explains why our world might not be so perfect. The other thing is that this movie possesses a lot of great character moments for Diana, and the one that we all know very well is the scene of her walking out to no man's land. That is truly some of the most epic stuff DC has to offer, and I think they really nailed her first outing. At our number 7 spot, I said we were going to include the Dark Knight Trilogy on this list, and this spot belongs to The Dark Knight Rises.
I had to find a way to stop them trying to kill me.
You made a serious mistake.
Not as serious as yours, I fear.
Now let me get things straight. I love all 3 Dark Knight films, but this one I feel is just simply the weakest. It's definitely the slowest out of the 3, and that's not the worst thing in the world, it's just that there are some moments that I feel somewhat bored with in the film. Whenever the focus is on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character specifically, the film gets a little too overstuffed. But that's where my problems end, as this movie has the second best villain in all of DC. I am of course talking about Tom Hardy's Bane. He is fantastic, his lines are chilling to the bone, and the fact that he breaks Batman's back and leaves him in a cave to die while he watched his city burn is some top-tier villain writing. Batman's return to the action is also done very well both at the beginning and after he escapes the pit, and Anne Hathaway's Catwoman is also portrayed excellently. All of this makes a very fitting end to one of cinema's greatest trilogies. At number 6, we have the first entry into Christopher Nolan's Batman universe in Batman Begins.
Tell us, Mr. Wayne. What do you fear?
This used to be my least favorite one out of the bunch, but over time I've actually grown to really enjoy this movie for what it is. Most of that is because of Christian Bale's performance and the excellent handling of his origin. I feel like overall, I've just been appreciating Bale's acting more and more the past few years, and like in all of his films, it's on full display here. Mix him with an all-star cast, Chris Nolan directing and Hans Zimmer especially doing the score, you have yourself a recipe for success. Looking back, I also appreciate how much this movie did for superhero cinema, as it was really the first one to succeed at pulling off the dark and gritty tone throughout. Almost 20 years later, it still succeeds at telling Batman's origins perfectly. Here's where we get controversial, and I'm assuming you've noticed how none of Zack Snyder's films have made it on this list yet. Well, as we get to our top 5, we have Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Tell me. Do you bleed? You will.
I am of course talking about the Ultimate Edition, which is just over 3 hours long. I'll get it out of the way now. I'm a fan of Snyder's work, but not a nut, I'll kill you if you don't restore the Snyderverse kind of way, more of the I'd love to see this universe continue kind of way. My interest in the Snyderverse really peaked with this film in particular. There was just something about it that I gravitated towards. Maybe it's Batman, played to perfection by Ben Affleck. It could be Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL's score, which is powerful in all the right moments and poignant in all the others. It could be Henry Cavill's Superman, who gets put through the ringer in this one as he deals with the conflict of keeping his loved ones safe in a world that wants to tear him down for simply existing. I love all of those things, but mainly it's the fact that it took Batman and Superman, two of cinema's most iconic heroes, and pit them against each other in a way that actually made sense. It was more than getting these two together to do battle. Each one of them had their reasons for fighting the other, and I love how that culminates in their eventual team-up. Guys, I seriously think that Batman vs. Superman is one of the most underrated superhero films of our time, and I think that as time goes on, we're going to start realize truly how special this movie was. I think it's a movie that gets better with age, but for now, I'll just chalk up the haters to what Ma Kent says in the middle of this movie.
People hate what they don't understand.
At number 4, we have the true sequel to BVS in Zack Snyder's Justice League.
He'll be here, Alfred, I know it.
What makes you so sure?
Faith, Alfred. Faith.
I love everything about this movie. The fact that it's even made is enough for me to put it high up on this list, but it's truly at this spot because of how fantastic this movie turned out to be. After years of campaigning, Snyder finally was able to complete his film and show us just how butchered the 2017 version of this movie was. It's more than just an improvement though, as literally every element is done better. The music is beautiful by Junkie XL. The visuals are so much better compared to the previous versions, but what I love so much about it is the fact that it used its 4-hour runtime to develop all of the new characters in a way that made you care about them. Cyborg and the Flash specifically get so much to do in this one, and it's so great to see. Flash running back in time to save the Justice League is one of the best moments in the superhero genre. Superman's return is handled so well, and Batman's arc is fully redeemed as he goes from being broken down to filled with a renewed sense of hope. This movie and its ending are a true testament to what the Snyderverse had in store, and even though I know there's little to no hope of continuing the story, I still really appreciate what we did get and the fact that Snyder got to release his true version of the film. At number 3, we have Matt Reeves' The Batman.
Get out of here, freak. You hear me? That little suit's gonna get all full of blood.
Mine or yours?
Seeing this movie in theaters was honestly a highlight of my life. It was the first time I'd seen a Batman film in theaters, and I was so excited. The trailers looked amazing, and my friends and I sat down to one of the greatest pieces of comic book storytelling I have ever seen. Robert Pattinson shines as the Dark Knight, and Paul Dano is legitimately terrifying as the Riddler. I really don't even know if I can say a bad thing about this movie, other than the fact that it's not the most rewatchable due to its runtime, but other than that, my problems end. The mystery element is handled very well, the score by Michael Giacchino is perfect as Batman's new theme is the definition of who he is as a person. Overall, I just love the journey he goes on in this film, from being Gotham's crime fighter to a symbol of hope at the end. Matt Reeves does an excellent job with the Caped Crusader, and I cannot wait to see what he has in store for the sequel. At our number 2 spot, we have Zack Snyder's first outing in Man of Steel.
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son. But somewhere out there, you have another father too who gave you another name. And he sent you here for a reason, Clark. And even if it takes you the rest of your life, you owe it to yourself to find out what that reason is.
The more I watch this film, the more I love how Superman is portrayed. Henry Cavill was born to play the role of the Son of Krypton, as he is the best part about this movie. The next best thing about this one is the score by Hans Zimmer. His music for Superman is some of the best work in all of cinema history. If you've never listened to Flight, go do yourself a favor, you won't regret it. Another thing I love about this film is the flashbacks we get to Clark's childhood, specifically the scenes with Jonathan Kent. All the scenes with him are emotional and go a long way in establishing just who Superman is as a character. And come on, Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent was perfect casting. The villain of this movie is also one of DC's best in Michael Shannon's Zod. He's menacing and brutal, all for the survival of his race. And I love what they do with his character, and the final action sequence between him and Superman is legendary. Overall, this movie just means so much to me as a person, and it would be at number 1 if it wasn't for
Cyber Guardian, a watchful protector, a Dark Knight.
That's right, Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight is without a doubt my number 1 pick. To me, this is the greatest superhero movie of all time, and it's not even close. From the opening bank heist to, of course, the legendary performance given by Heath Ledger, I have zero problems with this movie. It's simply perfection. Christian Bale's Batman is again at the top of his game, and Michael Caine's Alfred is another great element to not only this movie, but to the trilogy as a whole. Zimmer's score is another reason why it's number 1 as well, as this is some of his best work on full display. Harvey Dent is another character that everyone kind of forgets about due to the other great elements of this movie, but Aaron Eckhart plays him so well. I don't know if any other film will come close to the level this movie is at, and I sincerely mean that, because lately I've seen a lot of people say this movie is overrated and praised too much, and, you know, to that all I have to say is...
What happened? Your balls drop off?
Guys, thank you so much for watching this ranking. It took a long time to make, so I would appreciate if you guys would give it a like, maybe consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We have a lot of stuff going on the channel and on the podcast format, so feel free to check those out. And I would also like to know what you guys think would be, you know, top 5, top 3. Leave them down in the comments below, and also, you know, tell me why I'm wrong, because there's no way I didn't upset at least someone who watches this video. So leave them down in the comments below. Otherwise, this has been Rayside signing off. I hope that you all have an absolutely fantastic day.